Catherine Sterling's hands trembled as she placed the hospital bill on the coffee shop table. Across from her sat a man she'd never met. Jack Morgan, widowed father, broke and desperate. His 9-year-old daughter Sophie had leukemia. 3 months to live without treatment he couldn't afford. "Marry me," Catherine said, her voice steady despite the madness of her proposal. "I'll pay for everything. Sophie lives. We become a family." Jack stared at the bill, $340,000, then at the elegant stranger offering salvation. "What's the catch?" he whispered. Catherine's answer would change 4 lives forever. Comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Sophie's story has traveled. Jack Morgan's world ended the day Dr. Martinez said the word leukemia. Not immediately. Not in that sterile office with its anatomical posters and the ticking clock that suddenly became deafening. The world ended slowly, one impossible number at a time. $340,000 for treatment. $12,000 per chemotherapy session. $50,000 for the bone marrow transplant Sophie would need if when they found a match. "There are assistance programs," Dr. Martinez had said, his kind eyes unable to mask the truth they both knew. Programs with waiting lists. Applications that took months. Sophie had weeks, maybe 3 months if they were lucky. Luck. Jack had stopped believing in that 4 years ago, when Laura's car was hit by a drunk driver on her way home from the grocery store. 2 minutes from their house. She'd been carrying Sophie's birthday cake. Now here he sat in Riverside Coffee on a gray Seattle morning staring at his phone screen. Bank balance, $197.43. The hospital wanted a $50,000 deposit just to start treatment. He'd already sold everything worth selling. Laura's jewelry, his truck. The house they'd bought together was already mortgaged to the ceiling for his own medical bills from the construction accident. "Daddy." Sophie's voice pulled him back. She sat across from him, her strawberry blonde hair so much like Laura's pulled into a ponytail that emphasized how thin her face had become. His 9-year-old daughter, who should have been complaining about homework and asking for a puppy, looked at him with eyes too old, too knowing. "You're doing the worry face again," Sophie said quietly. Jack forced a smile. The smile that had become his default expression over the past 2 weeks since the diagnosis. The smile that said, "Everything's fine," when nothing was fine. "Just thinking about work stuff, kiddo." Sophie reached across the table and patted his hand. 9 years old, and comforting her father because she already understood. Kids with cancer grew up fast. They learned to read the silences, the forced cheerfulness, the way adults suddenly couldn't meet their eyes. "It's okay to be scared, Daddy," she said. "Dr. Martinez said it's okay to be scared." Jack's throat constricted. He wanted to scoop her up like he did when she was little, when scraped knees and monster nightmares were the worst things in her world. But Sophie wasn't little anymore. Cancer had stolen that too. "I'm not scared," he lied. "We're going to figure this out." How? The question hung between them. Direct, simple, devastating. Before Jack could attempt an answer he didn't have, the coffee shop door opened. A woman entered, and something about her made every head in the room turn. She was maybe 60, with silver hair, cut in a sharp bob that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. Her charcoal suit was the kind you saw on magazine covers. But it wasn't her clothes or her obvious wealth that made people stare. It was the way she moved. Purposeful, direct, like someone who'd never heard the word no and wouldn't recognize it if she did. Her eyes scanned the coffee shop and locked onto Jack with an intensity that made him instinctively pull Sophie closer. The woman walked straight to their table. "Jack Morgan." Her voice was crisp, professional, the kind of voice that closed million-dollar deals before lunch. "Who's asking?" Jack's protective instincts flared. He didn't know this woman. Couldn't imagine how she knew his name. "My name is Catherine Sterling." She glanced at Sophie, then back to Jack. "I need to speak with you. It's about Sophie's treatment." The world tilted sideways. "How do you know about—" Jack started. "Please." Catherine's professional mask cracked for just a second, revealing something raw underneath. "Let me buy you both something to eat and I'll explain everything." Jack should have said no. Should have grabbed Sophie and left. This woman was a stranger who somehow knew about his daughter's cancer about him. Every instinct screamed danger. But desperate people don't listen to instincts. "Sophie, why don't you go pick out a muffin?" Jack said quietly, pressing what remained of his cash into her hand. "Whatever you want." Sophie looked between them, that too-old understanding in her eyes, but she nodded and headed to the counter. Catherine sat down without waiting for an invitation. She placed a manila folder on the table between them. Jack recognized it immediately, the hospital logo, Sophie's name, the obscene numbers that had been haunting his dreams. "Where did you get that?" His voice came out harder than intended. "I have friends on the hospital board." Catherine folded her hands on the table. "They mentioned a case that caught my attention. Single father, construction worker with a disability, daughter with leukemia. No insurance adequate for the treatment required. So what you get off on watching desperate people squirm?" Anger felt better than fear. "This some kind of documentary project rich lady studies how the other half dies?" Catherine's expression didn't change, but something flashed in her eyes. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. 20 years ago, she said quietly, "I lost my daughter Elena. She was 32. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light while she was on her way to have lunch with me." Jack's anger deflated slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't see—" "Elena had a daughter. Lily. My granddaughter." Catherine's voice remained steady, but her hands had begun to shake slightly. "Lily had leukemia, diagnosed at age 7. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. "Is she—" "She survived. 5 years in remission. She's 12 now." Catherine opened the folder, but instead of medical bills, she pulled out a photograph. A young girl with a bright smile holding a soccer trophy. "She survived because I had the money for the best treatment, because I could pay for experimental therapies, because I could fly specialists in from Europe and Asia, because cancer doesn't care about love or desperation, only money." Jack stared at the photo of the smiling girl. Sophie could have that smile again. If he had $340,000. If he had connections. If he was anything other than a broke ex-construction worker with $197 to his name. "Why are you telling me this?" His voice cracked. "Because after Elena died, I made a promise to myself." Catherine pulled out another document. Jack saw his own face staring back at him from what looked like an investigative report. "I'd use my money to save children like Lily. Children whose only crime was being born to parents without wealth." "You investigated me." It wasn't a question. Thoroughly. Catherine didn't apologize. Jack Morgan, 37 years old, former Marine, 2 tours in Iraq, honorable discharge, married Laura Chen, high school sweetheart. 1 daughter, Sophie Morgan Chen, age 9. Wife died 4 years ago. You've been raising Sophie alone while working construction until an accident 8 months ago left you with chronic back pain and limited mobility. You've applied to 347 jobs in the past 6 months. Been rejected by all of them. Each fact felt like a punch. Jack's life reduced to bullet points in a rich woman's folder. You've sold everything of value, maxed out 3 credit cards, took out a payday loan you can't repay. Catherine's voice softened. You've been to the hospital chapel 4 times in the past week. The security footage shows you stayed for hours. Jack's hands clenched into fists. What do you want? To make you an offer. I'm not interested in charity. Good. Catherine leaned forward. Because I'm not offering charity. I'm proposing a business arrangement. Before Jack could respond, Sophie returned with a chocolate muffin the size of her head. She broke it carefully in half and pushed the larger piece toward Jack. "For you, Daddy, you didn't eat breakfast." Catherine watched this exchange with an expression Jack couldn't read. When Sophie bit into her half of the muffin, closing her eyes with pleasure at something as simple as chocolate, Catherine's jaw tightened. "Sophie," Catherine said gently, "do you like animals?" Sophie's eyes lit up. "I love animals. We had a dog named Rusty before." She stopped glancing at Jack. "Before we had to give him away because we couldn't afford dog food," Jack finished silently. "I have 2 golden retrievers," Catherine continued. "Hemingway and Fitzgerald. They're very friendly and they love children. Would you like to meet them sometime?" "Could I?" Sophie looked at Jack with such hope that his heart cracked. "We'll see, sweetheart." Jack kept his voice neutral, but inside he was screaming. "Don't do this. Don't give her hope. Don't let her get attached to things we can't have." Catherine seemed to understand. She pulled out a business card and slid it across the table to Jack. "My personal number. I'd like to take you and Sophie to dinner tonight. Somewhere nice. My treat. We can discuss my proposal properly." "I told you I'm not." 7 o'clock, canless. It's Sophie's favorite kind of food. Catherine stood up. "How do you know what my daughter—" Jack started, then stopped. The investigation. This woman knew everything. Catherine looked down at Sophie, who was scraping chocolate frosting from the muffin wrapper with her finger. "When Elena was sick, people told me to be realistic about her chances, to prepare for the worst, to not throw good money after bad." Her voice hardened. "I didn't listen. I fought for her with everything I had. She lived 20 more years because I refused to accept that money should determine who gets to survive." She turned back to Jack. "Sophie has the same type of leukemia Lily had. Same genetic markers. I know the doctors. I know the treatment protocol. I know the survival rates with proper care." She paused. "And I know what happens without it." Jack felt like he was drowning. "Why us? Why Sophie?" "Because Elena made me promise to help one child every year. A child who would die without intervention." Catherine's eyes held his. "This year that child is Sophie. Come to dinner, Jack. Hear me out. If you don't like my proposal, you never have to see me again." She walked away, leaving her untouched coffee and Jack's world spinning. Sophie tugged his sleeve. "Daddy? Who was that lady?" Jack stared at the business card. "Catherine Sterling, CEO, Sterling Industries." Below the title, handwritten in elegant script, "Please give me the chance to help your daughter live." "I think," Jack said slowly, "she might be an angel, or a devil. I honestly can't tell." That evening, Jack stood in front of their apartment's bathroom mirror, trying to make his one good shirt look presentable. The collar was frayed, and there was a stain near the pocket he'd tried unsuccessfully to remove. He looked like exactly what he was, a desperate man, pretending he belonged in a world of expensive restaurants and women in designer suits. "Daddy, you look handsome." Sophie appeared in the doorway wearing her only dress. Laura's mother had sent it for her 8th birthday. It was getting tight across the shoulders. "You look beautiful, kiddo." Jack straightened her collar, his hands lingering. How many more times would he get to do this? How many more mornings would Sophie wake up in the bed she'd slept in since she was 3? How many more? Stop. He couldn't think like that. The taxi ride to Canlis took 20 minutes. Jack watched the meter climb and calculated how many meals each dollar represented. Stupid. Catherine was paying for dinner. He needed to stop thinking like a man with $197 to his name. Except that's exactly what he was. The restaurant perched on a hillside overlooking Lake Union. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle's skyline glittered like a promise, or a taunt. Catherine was already seated at a corner table. She'd changed into a navy dress that probably cost more than 3 months of Jack's old salary. But what struck him was how she looked at Sophie, not with pity, but with a hunger that made Jack's protective instincts flare. "Thank you for coming," Catherine gestured to the seats across from her. "I've taken the liberty of ordering some appetizers. I hope that's all right." Sophie's eyes went wide at the menu. "Daddy, they have lobster." "You can order whatever you want, sweetheart." Catherine smiled. "Tonight is about celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Jack asked carefully. "Possibilities." Catherine waited until Sophie was distracted by the menu before continuing in a lower voice. "I spoke with Dr. Martinez this afternoon. Sophie's cancer is aggressive but treatable. With proper care, her survival rate is 85%. With proper care, that costs more money than I'll see in my lifetime." Jack tried to keep the bitterness from his voice. "Which brings me to my proposal." Catherine pulled out another folder. Thinner this time. "I'm prepared to pay for all of Sophie's treatment. The full $340,000 plus any additional costs. The best doctors, the best facility, whatever she needs." Jack's heart hammered. "In exchange for what?" "Marriage." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Jack stared at her. "You're insane." "Probably." Catherine's expression didn't change. "But I'm also serious. Marry me, Jack. Legal marriage. I adopt Sophie. She gets treatment, education, everything. You get financial security." You can't be." Jack couldn't form a coherent sentence. "I'm 62 years old," Catherine continued calmly. "I've been widowed twice. I built a company worth $400 million. I have houses in 3 states, and I'm completely, utterly alone." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Elena's death broke something in me. Lily's recovery showed me what I was living for. But she has her own mother. I'm just the grandmother who spoils her on holidays." Sophie laughed at something on the menu, the sound painful in its innocence. "I don't want your pity," Jack said through gritted teeth. "Good, because I'm not offering it." Catherine leaned forward. "I'm offering a partnership. You need money. I need purpose. You need help raising your daughter. I need to be needed again. People don't get married for reasons like this. People get married for worse reasons every day. Love, that's the real fairy tale." Catherine's voice turned bitter. "My first husband married me for my father's business connections. My second husband loved me, and I watched cancer eat him alive over 2 years. Love doesn't pay hospital bills, Jack. Love doesn't keep children alive. So what we just pretend playhouse. We build something real from practical foundations." Catherine pulled out a document. "A prenup. Clear terms. Separate bedrooms. No physical expectations. You maintain full parental rights. If either of us wants out after Sophie's in remission, we divorce amicably. You get a settlement. Sophie's medical trust remains untouched." Jack's head spun. "This is insane." "Daddy?" Sophie looked up from her menu, concern in her eyes. "Are you okay?" "Fine, sweetheart." He forced that smile again. "Just talking about boring grown-up stuff." Catherine flagged down a waiter. "Let's order. We can discuss details after dinner." The meal passed in a blur. Jack barely tasted the steak that probably cost more than his weekly grocery budget. He watched Sophie devour lobster tail and laugh at Catherine's stories about her dogs. Watched this elegant stranger charm his daughter with tales of travel and adventure. Watched Sophie lean closer, drawn to this woman who represented everything they'd lost: stability, security, hope. "Miss Catherine," Sophie said during dessert, "Daddy says we might have to move soon." Jack's chest tightened. They'd had that conversation 2 days ago. The landlord wanted them out. Behind on rent, and Sophie's medical appointments made too much noise. "Where would you like to live?" Catherine asked gently. "Somewhere with a yard. And a dog." Sophie stirred her ice cream. "Daddy says maybe someday." Someday. The word that meant never. Catherine looked at Jack, and he saw his own desperation reflected back at him. After dinner, Catherine sent Sophie to the lobby with her driver to see the fish tank while she and Jack talked privately. "I know what you're thinking." Catherine said. That this is too good to be true, that I'm some kind of predator. The thought crossed my mind. I had you investigated by 3 separate firms. I know about the night Laura died. I know you held Sophie at the funeral and she asked if Mommy was coming back. I know you've been to 6 different banks trying to get a loan. I know you've looked up the symptoms of arsenic poisoning. Jack's blood ran cold. He had looked that up. One night of weakness, of desperation, of thinking, maybe if he was gone, Sophie could go to Laura's parents. They had money. They could save her. I also know, Catherine continued softly, that you deleted the search and called the suicide prevention hotline. That you talked to them for 2 hours. That you promised you'd never leave Sophie. Stop. Jack's voice broke. Stop reciting my life like it's a goddamn dossier. I need you to understand something, Jack. Catherine's composure cracked. When Elena died, I wanted to die too. The only thing that stopped me was Lily. That 7-year-old girl who'd just lost her mother needed her grandmother to fight. So I fought. I paid for treatment. I held her hand through chemotherapy. I was there when she got sick, and when she got better, and every moment in between. Tears streamed down Catherine's face, shocking in their suddenness. And when Lily went into remission, when she didn't need me anymore the way she had, I realized I had nothing. No purpose. No reason to get up in the morning. I've spent 3 years looking for that reason. She grabbed Jack's hand across the table. Sophie is my reason, and before you tell me that's not fair to you or to her, ask yourself this: what wouldn't you do to save your daughter? Jack thought about the arsenic search, about the insurance policy that would pay double for accidental death, about standing on the Aurora Bridge at 3 a.m., looking at the water below, calculating if Sophie would be better off without him. I'd do anything, he whispered. Then do this. Marry me. Let me help save Sophie. Let me have a purpose again. Catherine's grip tightened. I'm not asking you to love me, Jack. I'm asking you to let me love your daughter. Through the restaurant windows, Jack could see Sophie in the lobby, her face pressed against the fish tank, pointing excitedly at something in the water. 9 years old, and already losing weight from the cancer eating her from inside. What would the timeline be? His voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. Dr. Martinez can start treatment within 48 hours of the hospital receiving payment. I can wire the money the moment we're married. Quick ceremony. Courthouse. We can even keep it private if you want. And after, when Sophie's better, we evaluate. Maybe we've built something worth keeping. Maybe we haven't. But Sophie will be alive to have an opinion. Catherine released his hand. I'm not the villain here, Jack. I'm just a woman with more money than purpose trying to help a man with more love than options. Jack closed his eyes, saw Laura's face, heard her voice in the hospital after Sophie was born. Whatever it takes to keep her safe. I need to think about it. Of course. Take the night. Catherine pulled out a check and slid it across the table. Jack looked down at it. $5,000. Made out to him. What? Rent? Groceries. Whatever you need while you decide. Consider it a signing bonus. Catherine stood. My driver will take you home. Call me tomorrow with your answer. She walked away, leaving Jack staring at a check that represented more money than he'd seen in months, and a proposal that would change everything. Sophie bounced over her face, flushed with excitement. Daddy? Did you see the octopus? It was so smart. Miss Catherine says they can solve puzzles and remember faces. That's amazing, kiddo. Jack pocketed the check like it might disappear if he looked at it too long. In the car, Sophie chattered about the fish, the dinner, Catherine's stories. Jack watched Seattle blur past the windows and felt like he was standing at a crossroads he never wanted to reach. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Whatever you decide, the offer to help stands, even if your answer is no. Sophie deserves to live. Catherine. Jack stared at that message for the entire ride home. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Jack sat on their apartment's rickety fire escape and called the number he'd sworn never to use again. Jenny. His sister's voice on the other end was thick with sleep. "It's 2 in the morning. What's wrong? I need advice from someone who's not insane, who can tell me if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life." "Jack, you're scaring me. What happened?" So he told her. About Catherine, the investigation, the dinner, the proposal. The long silence that followed felt like judgment. "Jenny, let me make sure I understand," his sister said slowly. "A billionaire wants to marry you and pay for Sophie's cancer treatment. And you're calling me because it's insane." "Jack." Jenny's voice turned serious. "Do you remember when Sophie was born? What you said when you held her for the first time? I said I'd protect her, no matter what. You said you'd walk through fire for her. You said there was nothing in this world you wouldn't do to keep her safe." Jenny paused. "This isn't fire, Jack. This is a woman offering you a way to save your daughter's life. Why are you even hesitating?" "Because it feels wrong, like I'm selling myself." "You're not selling anything. You're making a choice. The same choice every parent makes, putting your child first." Jenny's voice softened. "Laura would tell you the same thing. She'd tell you to stop being proud and save Sophie." Jack looked through the window at Sophie's sleeping form. Her chest rose and fell with each breath. How many more breaths did she have if he said no? What if Catherine's crazy? What if this is some elaborate? What if she's not? Jenny interrupted. "What if she's just a lonely woman who wants to help? What if you're about to throw away Sophie's only chance because you're too proud to accept it?" Jack had no answer to that. He hung up and went inside. Sat beside Sophie's bed and watched her sleep. Her face was peaceful, unaware of the impossible choice her father faced. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered. "I'm so sorry you got stuck with a broke dad who can't afford to keep you alive." Sophie stirred in her sleep, reaching out blindly. Jack took her hand, feeling how fragile her fingers had become. He thought about Laura, about the life they'd planned, about how none of it mattered now because cancer didn't care about plans. He thought about Catherine's tears, about a woman who had everything money could buy, but nothing that mattered. He thought about the check in his pocket and the phone number that could change everything. At 3 a.m., Jack made his decision. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Catherine. "I need to know one thing. Why me, really? You could help any child. Why Sophie?" The response came back within seconds. "Because you remind me of myself. Desperate, willing to do anything, but too proud to ask for help. I was you, Jack, 20 years ago, watching my grandchild die because her mother couldn't afford treatment. Someone helped me then. Anonymous donor. I never knew who. But I promised I'd pay it forward. This is me keeping that promise." Jack read the message 3 times. Then he typed, "When do you want to get married?" Catherine's response was immediate. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., courthouse. Bring Sophie. After the ceremony, we go straight to the hospital. Dr. Martinez will be waiting. By tomorrow night, your daughter starts fighting for her life." Jack looked at Sophie one more time. "Okay," he whispered to the darkness. "Okay." He sent one word back to Catherine. "Yes." The reply came with an address. "I'll send a car at 9 a.m. Wear whatever you want. This isn't about the wedding, Jack. It's about what comes after." Jack sat in the dark and wondered if he'd just made a deal with an angel or a devil. By morning, he supposed he'd find out. Sophie woke up to sunshine streaming through their apartment window and her father making pancakes. Real pancakes, not the frozen kind from the dollar store. "What's the occasion?" She rubbed sleep from her eyes. Jack flipped a pancake, his hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. "We're getting married today." Sophie blinked. "What?" I'm marrying Catherine, the lady from last night. Jack set a plate in front of her. She's going to help us, Sophie. She's going to make sure you get better. You're marrying her so I can have treatment. Sophie's voice was small. Jack knelt beside her chair. I'm marrying her because she's giving us a chance. A real chance. And sometimes, kiddo, you have to take chances when they come. Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then, do you love her? The question gutted him. I don't know her well enough to love her yet, Jack said honestly. But I know she wants to help us, and I know that right now, that's what we need. What would Mommy say? Jack's throat closed. Your mom would say, do whatever it takes to keep you safe. She'd say love comes in different forms, and she'd say it's okay to accept help when you need it. Sophie nodded slowly. Will I call her Mom? Call her whatever feels right. There's no rules for this, sweetheart. At 9 a.m., a black car arrived. The driver, an older man named Thomas, helped them with their few belongings. Everything Jack and Sophie owned fit in 2 suitcases. Catherine met them at the courthouse steps. She wore a simple cream dress and held a bouquet of white roses. For you, she said, handing the bouquet to Sophie. Every girl should have flowers at a wedding. Sophie took them carefully like they might break. Thank you, Miss Catherine. Just Catherine is fine. She turned to Jack. Ready? No, but let's do it anyway. The ceremony took 7 minutes. Judge Hamilton, an old friend of Catherine's, performed the service in his chambers. He didn't ask questions, just smiled kindly at Sophie and pronounced them married with efficiency. When it was done, Catherine pulled out her phone and made a call. Dr. Martinez, it's Catherine Sterling. Yes, the payment's being wired now. We'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and looked at Jack. Your daughter's treatment starts today. Jack felt tears he'd been holding back for weeks finally break free. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Catherine's smile was sad. This is just the beginning. They drove to Seattle Children's Hospital in Catherine's car. Sophie sat between them in the back seat, holding both their hands. Am I really going to be okay? She asked quietly. Catherine squeezed her hand. You're going to fight, and we're going to fight with you. All of us together. Dr. Martinez met them at the oncology unit entrance. The room's ready. We'll start the first round of chemotherapy this afternoon. Sophie's hand tightened on Jack's. Will it hurt? Sometimes, Dr. Martinez said gently. But your dad and Catherine will be there every step. Jack looked at Catherine. His wife now, though it felt surreal to think it. She looked back at him, and in that moment, he saw the same fear and determination he felt. Every step, Catherine echoed. They walked into the hospital together, a family formed from desperation and hope. And Sophie, 9 years old with leukemia, and a future that had seemed impossible hours ago, squeezed the hands holding hers and took the first step toward survival. The chemotherapy started 3 hours after the wedding ceremony. Jack held Sophie's hand, while a nurse inserted the IV line, watching his daughter's face contort with the sharp sting of the needle. Catherine stood on Sophie's other side, her expensive cream dress looking out of place in the sterile hospital room. You're doing great, sweetheart, Jack murmured, brushing hair from Sophie's forehead. It pinches, Sophie said through gritted teeth. I know. Just breathe, like we practiced. Catherine reached out hesitantly, then pulled back. Jack noticed the gesture, the uncertainty in her movements. She'd paid for all of this, but didn't know what her role was supposed to be. Sophie, Catherine said softly, would you like me to tell you about the time Hemingway ate an entire Thanksgiving turkey? Sophie's eyes flickered to her. Your dog. He waited until everyone went to watch football, then jumped on the counter and devoured the whole thing. We found him in the living room so full he couldn't move, with gravy all over his face. Despite the needle in her arm and the poison about to flow through her veins, Sophie giggled. Was he in trouble? So much trouble, but he looked so pleased with himself we couldn't stay mad for long. Dr. Martinez returned with a bag of clear liquid. This is it, the first round. Sophie, you might feel tired or nauseous. That's normal. We'll monitor you closely. How long does it take? Jack asked. This session. About 2 hours. Then we'll see how she responds. 2 hours. Jack had sat through a lot of difficult things in his life. His wife's funeral, his father's slow death from Alzheimer's, his own recovery from the construction accident. But watching poison drip into his 9-year-old daughter's veins while she tried to smile bravely was a new kind of hell. Catherine excused herself after 30 minutes. Jack heard her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. He wanted to follow to make sure she was okay, but he couldn't leave Sophie. Is she mad at me? Sophie asked quietly. What no baby? Why would you think that? She left. She's just giving us some time together. Jack squeezed her hand. This is new for all of us. But 10 minutes later, Catherine returned with her eyes red and carrying 3 shopping bags. I thought we could use some things to pass the time, she said, her voice only slightly unsteady. She pulled out coloring books, puzzle books, a tablet loaded with movies, and Sophie's face lit up a stuffed golden retriever. This is Hemingway Jr., Catherine said, placing the plush dog in Sophie's lap. He'll keep you company when the real Hemingway can't be here. Sophie hugged the toy tightly. Thank you, Catherine. It was the first time she'd used Catherine's name without the miss in front of it. Something shifted in the room. Catherine's breath caught, and she sat down on the other side of Sophie's bed. You're welcome, sweetheart. They made it through the first session. Sophie got nauseous around the 90-minute mark and threw up twice. Catherine held the basin without flinching, while Jack rubbed Sophie's back. When it was over, Sophie fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from fighting her body's reaction to the chemicals trying to save her life. Dr. Martinez pulled Jack and Catherine into the hallway. She did well, he said. Better than some kids her age. The nausea is manageable with medication. We'll continue this protocol twice a week for the next month, then reassess. What are her chances? Catherine asked bluntly. With this type of leukemia and this treatment plan, we're looking at an 80 to 85% survival rate. But Catherine, you know as well as I do that statistics don't matter to individual cases. Sophie will either make it or she won't. We do everything we can to tip those odds in her favor. Jack's legs felt weak. 85% sounded good until you remembered there was a 15% chance your daughter would die anyway. When can we take her home? He asked. Tonight if she's stable. But Jack, you should prepare yourself. The next few months are going to be brutal. Sophie will get worse before she gets better. The chemotherapy attacks everything, not just the cancer cells. She'll lose her hair. Her immune system will be compromised. She'll be sick a lot. I know. Jack had read everything he could find about childhood leukemia in the 2 weeks since the diagnosis. I'm ready. Dr. Martinez glanced at Catherine. Both of you need to be ready. This isn't something one parent can handle alone. We'll handle it, Catherine said firmly. Together. It was the first time she'd referred to them as a unit. Jack looked at her, this woman he'd married 6 hours ago, and realized they were in this now. For better or worse, like the vows they'd barely heard. They took Sophie home at 8 that evening. Home. Jack had to remind himself that home was no longer their cramped apartment with the broken heater and the landlord threatening eviction. Home was Catherine Sterling's house in Queen Anne, a place he'd never seen. Thomas drove them through Seattle's evening traffic. Sophie dozed against Jack's shoulder. Hemingway Jr. clutched in her arms. Catherine sat on Sophie's other side, staring out the window. Thank you, Jack said quietly. Catherine turned to him. You don't need to keep thanking me. Yeah, I do. What you did today. What I did today was the bare minimum. Paying for treatment. Any decent person with resources would do the same. No, they wouldn't. Most people would have walked past us in that coffee shop and never looked back. Catherine was quiet for a moment. I couldn't walk past. When I saw Sophie's name on that hospital board list, when I read about her case, I saw Lily. Same age when she was diagnosed. Same type of cancer. It was like the universe giving me a second chance. A second chance at what? At being there from the beginning. With Lily, I came in after the diagnosis, after Elena had already started scrambling for treatment options. I threw money at the problem, but I missed the fear, the desperation, the moment when you realize your world has ended. She looked at him. I wanted to be there for that part this time. To be the answer instead of arriving after someone had already found it. Jack didn't know what to say to that. The rawness in her voice made him realize that for all her wealth and power, Catherine was as lost as he was, just in a different way. The car turned onto a tree-lined street. The houses here had gates and landscaping, and the kind of quiet that came from money insulating you from the world's noise. Thomas pulled into a circular driveway in front of a house that made Jack's breath catch. This is home. Sophie had woken up and was staring out the window. This is home, Catherine confirmed. It wasn't ostentatious, not like the mansions Jack had worked on during his construction days, all glass and sharp angles designed to intimidate. This was a classic craftsman-style house, all warm wood and stone with ivy climbing the walls and lights glowing in the windows. It's beautiful, Jack said. It's too big for one person, Catherine replied. It's been too big for a long time. Thomas helped them with their meager luggage, 2 suitcases for their entire lives. Jack felt suddenly embarrassed by how little they had to bring to this merger of households. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair stood in the entrance. Mr. Morgan, Sophie, welcome. I'm Margaret, the housekeeper. I've prepared the guest rooms, and there's soup on the stove if anyone's hungry. Thank you, Margaret, Catherine said. But they're not guests. This is Jack, my husband, and Sophie, my daughter. They live here now. Margaret's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. Of course. My apologies. Welcome home, Mr. Morgan. Welcome home, Sophie. Sophie, my daughter. Catherine had said it so naturally, claiming the title with the confidence Jack envied. He'd been Sophie's father for 9 years, but this woman had bought the right to call herself Sophie's mother in a single afternoon. The inside of the house matched the outside. Warm, comfortable. The kind of place that had been lived in and loved. Family photos covered the walls. Catherine with her late husbands, Catherine with a young woman who must have been Elena. Catherine with a little girl who had to be Lily. That's Lily, Sophie asked, pointing to a photo of a child about her age holding a soccer ball. That's her. She's 12 now. You'll meet her soon. Catherine knelt down to Sophie's level. Sophie, I want to show you something. She led them upstairs. The hallway had 4 doors. Catherine opened the second one. Jack felt his throat tighten. The room was painted a soft lavender, Sophie's favorite color. A bed with a white canopy stood against one wall, bookshelves lined another, and a window seat overlooked the garden. But it was the desk that made Jack's vision blur. An art table fully stocked with supplies, pencils, paints, everything Sophie had ever wanted, but they couldn't afford. This is your room, Catherine said. If you don't like the color, we can change it. If you want different furniture, we'll get it. This is your space. Sophie walked in slowly, touching everything like she was afraid it might disappear. This is really mine. Really yours. All of it. All of it. Sophie turned to Jack, tears in her eyes. Daddy. Jack couldn't speak. He just nodded. Sophie walked to Catherine and hugged her, just threw her thin arms around this stranger's waist and held on. Catherine froze for a second, then wrapped her arms around Sophie and closed her eyes. Thank you, Sophie whispered. Catherine's shoulders shook. You're welcome, sweetheart. You're so welcome. Jack turned away, giving them privacy for a moment he hadn't expected. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, a transaction, Sophie's life for their presence in Catherine's house. But watching his daughter hug the woman who'd saved her life, Jack realized it was already more complicated than that. Catherine showed Jack his room next. It was across the hall from Sophie's, masculine and comfortable, with a bathroom twice the size of their old apartment's kitchen. "Your room is at the end of the hall," Jack said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I thought proximity to Sophie would be more important than proximity to me." "Thank you for thinking of that, Jack." Catherine stood in the doorway. "We should establish some ground rules. For the household. For us." "Okay. Sophie comes first. Always. Whatever she needs whenever she needs it. We're both her parents now, equal say in decisions." "Agreed. Second, we maintain separate lives in public. I'll attend business functions, you're welcome to come or not. No pressure to play the devoted couple." "What about in private?" "In private we're honest, with each other and with Sophie. No pretending feelings we don't have." Catherine paused. "But also no hostility. We're partners even if we're not in love." Jack nodded. "Anything else?" "Give me a chance to be her mother. I know that's hard. I know Laura's dead." The words came out harsher than Jack intended. "Sophie needs a mother. If you want to be that, I won't stop you. But Catherine, if you're going to do this, you can't quit. You can't decide in 6 months that this is too hard and walk away. Sophie's lost enough." "I won't walk away." Catherine's voice was steel. "I promise you that. Whatever happens between us, I will never abandon Sophie." They stood in the hallway, two strangers who'd promised to be a family, neither knowing if they could actually pull it off. "We should get Sophie settled," Jack said finally. "There's soup downstairs, Margaret's vegetable barley. Sophie should try to eat something." They went back to Sophie's room. She'd unpacked Hemingway Jr. and arranged him carefully on her bed. She'd also found the art supplies and was holding a set of watercolors like they were treasure. "Can I paint tonight?" she asked. "You need to eat first," Jack said. "Then if you're not too tired—" "She can paint," Catherine interrupted. "She should do whatever makes her happy. Starting tomorrow, she'll have a lot of days where she doesn't feel like doing anything." Jack wanted to argue, to insist on routine and bedtime and all the structure he'd fought to maintain. But Catherine was right. After tomorrow, when the chemotherapy really kicked in, Sophie wouldn't want to paint. She'd be too busy being sick. "Okay," he said. "Paint after soup." Dinner was quiet. Margaret had set 3 places at the kitchen table, something Jack appreciated. He'd been dreading eating in some formal dining room, feeling out of place with the wrong fork. The kitchen was large but warm, clearly the heart of the house. Sophie managed half a bowl of soup before pushing it away. "My tummy feels funny." "That's normal," Catherine said. "The chemotherapy affects your appetite. Don't force it." But Jack noticed Catherine herself had barely eaten. She pushed food around her bowl, watching Sophie with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. After dinner, Sophie painted at her new art table while Jack unpacked their few belongings. He heard Catherine on the phone in her office down the hall. "Yes, I got married today." "No, you don't know him." "It's complicated, Robert. Just adjust the paperwork and add Sophie to all my insurance policies. I want it done by morning." Jack paused in the act of hanging up Sophie's clothes. She was already on Catherine's insurance, already legally Catherine's daughter. The speed of it was dizzying. His phone rang. "Jenny." "How did it go?" his sister asked without preamble. "We got married. Sophie started treatment. We moved into Catherine's house." "Jesus, Jack. That's a lot for one day." "Yeah." "How are you holding up?" Jack looked around the bedroom that was bigger than his old living room. "I don't know. It doesn't feel real." "What's she like, Catherine?" "Intense, generous, sad." Jack chose his words carefully. "She lost her daughter 3 years ago, and her granddaughter had the same cancer as Sophie. I think she's trying to save them both by saving Sophie." "That's a lot of pressure to put on a sick kid." "I know. But Jenny, you should see Sophie's face. The room Catherine prepared for her. The art supplies. The way Catherine looks at her like she's precious. His voice caught. It's the way Laura used to look at her. Jenny was quiet. Are you okay with that another woman being Sophie's mom? I don't know if I have a choice. And honestly, if Catherine can give Sophie what I can't, then maybe it's good. Maybe Sophie needs someone who's not falling apart. You're not falling apart. I was. You know I was. Jack sat on the bed. 2 weeks ago, I was standing on the Aurora Bridge at 3 in the morning. The only thing that stopped me from jumping was knowing Sophie needed me. Jack. Catherine knew about that. She had me investigated, found out I'd looked up how long it takes to drown. She married me anyway. She's either crazy or she understands desperation better than anyone I've met. Maybe she's both. Jack laughed a broken sound. Yeah, maybe. After he hung up, Jack checked on Sophie. She'd fallen asleep at her art table, a half-finished painting in front of her. He carried her to bed, tucking her in carefully. Hemingway Jr. went under her arm. Catherine appeared in the doorway. Is she okay? Exhausted. It's been a long day. They stood together, watching Sophie sleep. Her chest rose and fell steadily, but Jack couldn't stop counting breaths. Couldn't stop wondering how many more she'd have. Jack, Catherine said softly, I want to be honest about something. He turned to her. When Elena died, I fell apart. Completely. I didn't leave my house for 3 months, didn't answer the phone, barely ate. My business partners had to run the company without me. She wrapped her arms around herself. What brought me back was Lily needing me. But by then, Lily's mother had already found other support systems. I was supplemental, an expensive checkbook who showed up for birthdays. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand what Sophie means to me. She's not a replacement for Elena or Lily. She's a chance to do this right. To be there from the beginning. To be essential instead of optional. Catherine's eyes glistened. I know that's selfish. I know I'm using your daughter to fill a hole in my own life. But I promise you, Jack, I will love her like she's mine. Because starting today, she is. Jack believed her. That was the terrifying part. This woman he barely knew who'd investigated him and proposed marriage in a coffee shop meant every word. Just don't hurt her, he said. Please. She's lost so much already. I won't. I swear I won't. They left Sophie's room together. In the hallway, Catherine hesitated. Would you like tea? I'm not going to sleep anytime soon. Jack wasn't either. Tea sounds good. They went down to the kitchen. Margaret had left for the night. Catherine moved around the space with easy familiarity, boiling water and pulling out cups. Jack sat at the table and watched her trying to reconcile this domestic woman with the powerful CEO who'd orchestrated their entire day. How long have you lived here? He asked. 15 years. I bought it after my second husband died. Wanted something that was just mine, not connected to either marriage. She poured tea and sat across from him. Elena loved this house. Said it felt like a real home, not a museum. It does. Feel like a home, I mean. It hasn't for a while. Since she died, it's just been me and Margaret, and too many empty rooms. Catherine wrapped her hands around her mug. I kept telling myself I needed to downsize, but I couldn't let it go. Kept hoping I'd find a reason to fill those rooms again. And now you have. Now I have. She met his eyes. Jack, I need you to know something. If Sophie doesn't make it, don't say that. If she doesn't make it, Catherine continued firmly, I won't abandon you. The marriage stands. The financial support stands. You won't be thrown back into poverty because the worst happens. That's in the prenup. You probably didn't read it before signing, but it's there. Jack hadn't read it. He'd signed where Catherine's lawyer pointed too desperate to care about the details. Why would you do that? Because losing a child is hard enough without also losing your home and security. I know. I lived it. Catherine's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. When Elena died, I had money to cushion the blow. I could take time off, could afford therapy, could travel to places where memories didn't choke me. Most people don't have that luxury. They have to keep working, keep functioning, keep pretending they're okay because bills don't stop when your world ends. You really have thought of everything. I've had 3 years to think. 3 years of wondering how to turn my grief into something useful. She sipped her tea. Sophie was my answer. You and Sophie. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, Seattle's night sounds filtered through the windows. Car horns in the distance, a dog barking. Normal life continuing while inside this house everything had changed. What happens now? Jack asked. Now we figure out how to be a family, one day at a time. Catherine set down her mug. Tomorrow Sophie has school. I've already notified them about her diagnosis and the treatment schedule. They'll send work home on the days she can't attend. She's going to hate missing school. She loves her teacher. Then we'll make sure she keeps up with her class. And Jack, you should think about what you want to do. Work, hobbies, whatever. You're not just Sophie's caretaker. You're allowed to have a life too. I was a construction foreman before the accident. Not much call for that now. What did you love about it? Jack considered. Problem solving. Taking a blueprint and making it real. Seeing something built from nothing. There are a lot of ways to build things. Not all of them involve physical labor. Catherine stood. Think about it. There's no rush. She rinsed her mug and headed toward the stairs. At the doorway, she paused. Jack, thank you for trusting me with Sophie. I know that couldn't have been easy. You're saving her life. That's not trust, it's desperation. Maybe. But you could have said no. Could have tried to find another way. You chose to believe I wouldn't hurt her. That's trust, even if it comes from desperation. After Catherine went upstairs, Jack sat alone in the kitchen of his new home. He thought about the day that had started in a cramped apartment and ended in a mansion. About signing papers that made him Catherine Sterling's husband. About Sophie's first chemotherapy treatment and her face when she saw her new room. He thought about Laura and what she'd think of all this. Would she understand? Would she be grateful? Sophie was getting treatment, or would she be horrified that Jack had married a stranger to get it? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Lily. Grandma Catherine told me about Sophie. I'm sending prayers. Cancer sucks, but the treatment works. Tell Sophie she's stronger than she thinks. P.S. Hemingway really did eat that turkey. Jack smiled despite everything. He showed Sophie the text the next morning over breakfast. She'd woken up nauseous, but managed some toast. Is Lily nice? Sophie asked. Sounds like it, Jack said. Will I get to meet her? Catherine, who'd joined them for breakfast, dressed for work, nodded. This weekend. Her mother's bringing her over. I thought you two should know each other. Sophie brightened. A friend who understands. Exactly. Catherine checked her watch. I have meetings all day, but I'll be home by 6. Jack, Margaret knows Sophie's medication schedule. Call me if anything happens, even small things. You're going to work. Jack hadn't expected that. I have to. The company doesn't run itself, and I'm still CEO. Catherine saw his expression and softened. But I'm a phone call away. Always. And I've cleared my schedule for every treatment day. After she left, Jack helped Sophie get ready for school. She was nervous about seeing her friends, worried they'd treat her differently. They'll probably have questions, Jack said, braiding her hair. You can answer them or not, whatever feels right. What if they're scared of me? Then they're not very good friends. Real friends stick around when things get hard. Thomas drove them to Sophie's school. Jack walked her to her classroom where Mrs. Patterson greeted them warmly. Sophie, we've missed you. She hugged Sophie gently. The class made you cards. They're on your desk. Sophie's eyes welled up. She went to her seat where 30 handmade cards waited. Get well soon. We love you, Sophie. Come back soon. Jack's chest ached watching her read each one. Sophie had been so worried about being different about cancer, making her an outsider. But her classmates had shown up for her in the way kids do best, with honesty and love. Mr. Morgan. Mrs. Patterson pulled him aside. We're all rooting for Sophie. Whatever she needs, we're here. Thank you. That means everything. Jack left Sophie at school and returned to Catherine's house. His house now, he reminded himself. But it didn't feel like his. He wandered the rooms like a guest afraid to touch anything, unsure where he belonged. Margaret found him in the library, staring at shelves of books he'd never have time to read. Mr. Morgan, would you like some lunch? Just Jack, please, and I can make my own lunch. Nonsense. You're family now. Let me take care of you. She studied him. You look lost. I am lost. Everything changed so fast. Margaret smiled. Mrs. Sterling does that. Makes decisions and moves forward without looking back. It's how she built her company. But Jack, she's a good woman. This house has been too quiet since Miss Elena passed. It needs life again. It needs children and mess and noise. I just hope we can give her what she needs. You already are. I saw her this morning. Really saw her, not the mask she wears. She smiled, Jack. A real smile. I haven't seen that in 3 years. Jack didn't know what to say to that. He ate the lunch Margaret prepared and then spent the afternoon researching childhood leukemia, trying to prepare himself for what was coming. The information was terrifying. Hair loss, nausea, infections, weakness, pain, but also hope, survival rates, success stories, children who made it through and grew up healthy. He was still reading when his phone rang. The school. Mr. Morgan's Sophie got sick in class. Not badly, just nausea. She's in the nurse's office. She's asking for you. Jack was out the door in seconds. Thomas drove him to the school where he found Sophie in the nurse's office, pale and teary. Daddy, I threw up in front of everyone. Oh, sweetheart. He held her. That's okay. That's normal. Everyone stared. They were probably just worried about you. The nurse, a kind woman named Diane, handed Jack some papers. Here's information about managing school attendance during treatment. Sophie might need to do half days for a while, and will need to be careful about germs. Her immune system will be compromised. Jack signed the papers and took Sophie home. She fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the morning's activities. He carried her upstairs and tucked her in, then sat in the chair beside her bed and watched her sleep. This was his life now, watching his daughter fight for survival in a stranger's house, married to a woman he didn't love, dependent on wealth he'd never earned. His phone buzzed. Catherine. I heard about school. How is she? Jack typed back. Sleeping, embarrassed but okay. I'm coming home early. Be there in 30 minutes. Jack didn't know how she'd managed to clear her schedule, but 30 minutes later, Catherine walked into Sophie's room, still in her business suit. How is she? She whispered. Tired, scared, trying to be brave. Catherine sat on the other side of the bed. She shouldn't have to be brave. She's 9 years old. But she does. That's the unfair part. She has to be brave whether she wants to or not. They sat together in silence. Two parents watching a child fight cancer, united by circumstance and hope and fear. And for the first time since signing those papers, Jack thought maybe this crazy arrangement might actually work. Not because they loved each other, but because they both loved Sophie. Maybe that was enough to build on. Sophie's hair started falling out on day 12. Jack found the first clump on her pillow when he went to wake her for breakfast. Long strawberry blonde strands, so much like Laura's, tangled together in a mass that made his stomach drop. Sophie was already awake, staring at her hands. More hair rested in her palms. Daddy, she whispered. It's happening. Jack sat on the edge of her bed, his mind racing for the right words. The words that would make this okay when nothing about this was okay. Dr. Martinez said this would happen. It's temporary. It'll grow back after treatment. I know. Sophie's voice was small. But knowing doesn't make it better. No, it doesn't. Sophie looked up at him with those two old eyes. Will you help me cut it? I don't want to wake up with more on my pillow. I want to control it. Jack's throat closed. Are you sure? I'm sure. Catherine appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work. She took in the scene immediately. The hair on the pillow, Sophie's trembling hands, Jack's barely controlled grief. I'll cancel my meetings, she said. You don't have to, Jack started. Yes, I do. Catherine pulled out her phone and typed rapidly. This is important. Sophie, give me 10 minutes to reschedule some calls, then we'll do this together. All three of us. She left before either of them could argue. Sophie looked at Jack. She doesn't have to stay home. She wants to, and honestly, I'm glad she will. I don't think I can do this alone. 20 minutes later, they gathered in Sophie's bathroom. Catherine had changed into jeans and brought scissors, clippers, and 3 different styles of hats she'd ordered online 2 days ago, anticipating this moment. How short do you want it? Catherine asked gently. Sophie touched her hair, running her fingers through strands that came away in her hand. All of it. If it's going to fall out anyway, I want it gone on my terms. Then that's what we'll do. Catherine plugged in the clippers. Jack, can you hold her hand? Jack knelt in front of Sophie, while Catherine stood behind her. The clippers buzzed to life loud in the quiet bathroom. Ready? Catherine asked. Sophie squeezed Jack's hand. Ready. The first pass took a chunk of hair from the crown of Sophie's head. It fell to the floor in a soft pile. Sophie flinched, but didn't cry. You're doing great, Catherine murmured, working steadily. So brave. More hair fell. Sophie's grip on Jack's hand tightened with each pass of the clippers, but she kept her eyes open, watching in the mirror as her identity changed. When Catherine finished, Sophie stared at her reflection. The little girl with the long ponytail was gone, replaced by someone who looked older, tougher, marked by illness. I look like a boy, Sophie said quietly. You look like a warrior, Catherine corrected. She pulled out one of the hats, soft purple with a small flower. But warriors get to wear armor. Sophie took the hat and put it on. It fit perfectly. She turned to look at herself from different angles. It's not so bad, she said, but her voice wavered. It's awful, Jack said, and Sophie's head snapped toward him. It's awful and unfair, and you're allowed to hate it. You don't have to be brave all the time, kiddo. Sophie's face crumpled. She launched herself at Jack, sobbing into his shoulder. I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't want to be bald. I don't want cancer. I want to be normal. I know, baby. I know. Catherine knelt beside them, her hand on Sophie's back. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to cry and scream and hate every second of this. But everyone keeps saying I'm brave, Sophie choked out. Mrs. Patterson and the nurse and the other kids, they keep calling me brave. Because you are brave, Jack said. But being brave doesn't mean you're not scared or sad. It means you keep going even when you are. They stayed on the bathroom floor until Sophie cried herself out. Then Catherine helped her wash her face while Jack cleaned up the hair, each strand a small grief. Later that morning, Catherine made pancakes, while Sophie sat at the kitchen table, wearing her new hat and picking at breakfast. She'd eaten 3 bites when the doorbell rang. That'll be Lily, Catherine said. I asked her mother to bring her by this morning. Thought you might want to meet someone who's been through this. Sophie's eyes widened with panic. I look awful. You look like you've been fighting. Lily will understand. Catherine answered the door. Jack heard female voices, then footsteps. A woman in her mid-30s entered the kitchen, followed by a girl of about 12 with dark curly hair and a bright smile. Sophie, this is my daughter-in-law Rachel, and this is Lily. Lily, Rachel, this is my husband Jack and my daughter Sophie. The words still felt strange in Jack's mouth, but Catherine said them with such ease that no one questioned them. Lily walked straight to Sophie. Cool hat. Purple's a good color. Thanks. Sophie touched the hat self-consciously. I had like 6 different hats when I was in treatment. Want to see pictures of my bald head? It was pretty funny. My ears stuck out. Sophie giggled despite herself. Really? Really? Come on, I'll show you. The two girls went upstairs, Lily chattering about treatment and side effects, and which anti-nausea medication worked best, speaking a language of survival that only they understood. Rachel watched them go, then turned to Jack. She's going to be okay. Sophie, I mean. Lily had the same type of leukemia, same protocol. She's been cancer-free for 5 years. 5 years, Jack repeated. It sounded like forever and no time at all. The first few months are the hardest, but kids are resilient. More resilient than we are. Rachel accepted coffee from Catherine. How are you two holding up? Jack and Catherine looked at each other, a wordless communication they'd developed over the past 2 weeks. We're managing, Catherine said diplomatically. Rachel laughed. That's code for barely surviving. I remember. Those first months with Lily, I couldn't sleep. Every time she coughed or spiked a fever, I thought this was it. This was the infection that would kill her. That's where I am now, Jack admitted. I check her breathing 20 times a night. That's normal. The fear is normal, and it gets better. Not gone, but better. They talked while the girls were upstairs. Rachel shared practical advice which foods Sophie might tolerate, how to manage school attendance, ways to maintain normalcy when everything felt abnormal. Jack soaked it in, desperately grateful for someone who'd walked this path before. Upstairs, Sophie and Lily were bonding over Lily's phone, looking at pictures from her treatment years. See, totally bald. I look like an alien. Lily zoomed in on a photo. You look brave, Sophie said. I was scared out of my mind, threw up 17 times after my first chemo session. My mom counted. You did. Yep, and I cried a lot, and I got mad at everyone. Cancer sucks, Sophie. Anyone who tells you different is lying. Sophie felt something loosen in her chest. Everyone keeps saying I'm so brave and I'll be fine, and I just want to scream at them. So scream. I'm serious. Get a pillow and scream into it. Helped me a lot. Did you think you were going to die? Lily was quiet for a moment. Yeah. Sometimes, especially on bad days when I felt really sick. But I didn't, and you won't either. How do you know? Because you've got Catherine, and Catherine doesn't lose. I'm serious. My grandma is like a force of nature. She decided I was going to live, and cancer didn't stand a chance. Sophie smiled at that. She is pretty intense. That's putting it mildly. She once made a hospital bring in a specialist from Germany because she didn't like what the local doctors were saying, just flew him over on her private jet like it was nothing. She has a private jet. 2, actually, but that's not the point. The point is, she doesn't give up. And now she's got you, which means you've got the best possible shot. Sophie touched her hat again. I'm really glad you came over. Me too. And hey, once you're feeling better, we should hang out for real. I'll teach you how to skateboard. I don't know how to skateboard. Neither did I before cancer. Learned after. It's like a middle finger to the universe. Can't kill me, I'm too busy doing kickflips. Sophie laughed a real laugh, the first one in days. When Rachel and Lily left an hour later, Sophie seemed lighter somehow, less alone in her fear. That helped, Jack said to Catherine. Thank you for thinking of it. Lily wanted to come. She remembers how scared she was, wants to be there for other kids going through it. Catherine watched Sophie head upstairs. She's stronger than she knows. She's had to be. The second week of treatment was worse than the first. Sophie's nausea intensified. She couldn't keep food down for more than a few hours. Her energy disappeared. The girl who'd loved running and playing became someone who could barely walk to the bathroom without help. Jack moved a cot into her room. Catherine set up a schedule with Margaret so someone was always within earshot. They took turns sitting with Sophie during her worst moments, holding basins when she threw up, rubbing her back, whispering reassurances that felt hollow. On day 16, Sophie spiked a fever of 103. Dr. Martinez admitted her to the hospital, immediately worried about infection. Jack rode in the ambulance with her, while Catherine followed in her car. Both of them terrified. This was the complication they'd been dreading. Sophie was in the hospital for 4 days. Jack never left her side. He slept in the chair beside her bed, ate hospital cafeteria food, and watched monitors obsessively. Catherine came every day after work, staying until the nurses kicked her out at midnight. On the third night, when Sophie was finally sleeping peacefully after antibiotics knocked out the infection, Catherine found Jack in the hallway, staring at nothing. "You should go home. Get real sleep." "Can't. What if she wakes up and I'm not here?" "Then I'm here. You're not alone in this anymore, Jack." He looked at her. Really looked at her, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes, the worry etched in her face. "This wasn't what you signed up for." Yes, it was. Exactly this. The fear and the hospital stays and the uncertainty. I knew what I was getting into. Did you? Because knowing in theory and living it are different things. Catherine sat beside him on the floor. When Lily was sick, I learned something important. You can't control cancer. You can throw money at it. Hire the best doctors, demand answers. But ultimately, you can't control whether the treatment works or not. The only thing you can control is showing up. Being present for every moment, good and bad. That's what you're doing. Showing up. So are you, and Sophie knows it. She told me yesterday that having both of us here makes her feel safer. Jack's eyes burned. She said, "Daddy's always been there, but now I have Catherine too. It's like having 2 protectors instead of 1. Catherine's voice broke slightly. She called me her protector, Jack. They sat together in the hallway, 2 people learning how to be a family through crisis. Sophie came home on day 21 of treatment. She was weak but stable, her fever gone, and appetite slowly returning. Jack carried her into the house and tucked her into bed with Hemingway Jr. and all 6 hats Catherine had bought. "I missed home," Sophie said softly. Jack realized she'd called Catherine's house home. Not their apartment. Not the place they'd lived before. This house, with its big rooms and comfortable furniture, and the smell of Margaret's cooking, had become home in 3 weeks. "We missed you too, kiddo." That night, Catherine knocked on Jack's door around midnight. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No. Keep thinking about what could have gone wrong. That fever." But it didn't. The antibiotics worked. She's okay. This time. But there will be other fevers, other complications. I can't... Catherine's voice cracked. "I can't lose another daughter, Jack. I can't go through that again." Jack didn't know what possessed him, but he pulled her into his arms. Catherine stiffened for a second, then collapsed against him, sobbing into his shoulder. "I thought I could handle this," she gasped out. Thought money and planning and preparation would be enough. But watching her in that hospital bed, I was 17 again, terrified and helpless. "You're not helpless. You saved her life. I'm paying for treatment. That's not the same as saving her. It's exactly the same. Without you, Sophie would be dead in 3 months. With you, she's fighting. She has a chance. That's everything." Catherine cried for a long time. Jack held her, this powerful woman who'd orchestrated their entire arrangement, who controlled millions of dollars, and ran a company who was utterly destroyed by the thought of losing Sophie. When she finally pulled away, her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate." "It was human. You're allowed to be scared." "I'm supposed to be strong, the one with resources and solutions." "You are strong. But strength doesn't mean never breaking down. It means breaking down and still showing up the next day." Catherine wiped her eyes. "Thank you for not judging me. Thank you for caring about Sophie enough to fall apart over her." Something shifted between them in that moment. A wall came down. They weren't just business partners anymore, not just co-parents, managing a sick child. They were two people sharing the worst fear imaginable and finding comfort in each other. Catherine left his room, but the intimacy of that moment lingered. The next morning, Sophie was well enough to attempt breakfast. She managed oatmeal and kept it down, a small victory they all celebrated. "Can I go back to school?" she asked. "Just for half days?" Jack looked at Catherine. They'd been making these decisions together now, checking with each other before answering. "Let's call Dr. Martinez," Catherine said. "See what he thinks." Dr. Martinez approved half days with strict rules about avoiding sick kids and washing hands constantly. Sophie returned to school on day 24, wearing her purple hat and carrying a note from her doctor. Mrs. Patterson had prepared the class. When Sophie walked in, no one stared or whispered. They just welcomed her back like she'd never left. "Sophie, you're here." Her best friend Emma ran over. "I saved you a seat at lunch." Sophie beamed. "Thanks, Emma." Jack watched from the doorway as his daughter rejoined her life, determined not to let cancer define her completely. That afternoon, he was home alone. Sophie at school, Catherine at work, Margaret grocery shopping when he found the photo album on the living room shelf. He shouldn't have opened it, knew it was private, but curiosity won. The album was filled with pictures of Elena. Elena as a baby, as a teenager in her army uniform, on her wedding day, holding newborn Lily. Catherine had documented her daughter's entire life. The last photo was of Elena and Catherine together, taken maybe a year before Elena died. They had the same smile, the same way of tilting their heads. She was beautiful. Jack jumped. Catherine stood in the doorway, home early. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "It's okay. That's why photo albums exist, to be looked at." Catherine sat beside him on the couch. That last picture was taken at Lily's 6th birthday party. Elena was so happy that day. Lily had been in remission for a year. We thought the worst was behind us. And then she died in a car accident. 3 months later, drunk driver ran a red light. Elena died instantly. The driver walked away with a broken arm. Catherine's voice was flat, emotionless, in the way that suggested too much emotion to process. "You know what the worst part was? The driver said he was sorry. Like, sorry fixed anything. Like, sorry brought my daughter back." "I'm sorry," Jack said, then winced. "That's inadequate, isn't it?" "Yes, but it's all anyone can say." Catherine turned the album pages, stopping at a photo of young Elena in a soccer uniform. She was so full of life, so determined. When she joined the army, I was terrified. Thought I'd lose her to war. Never imagined I'd lose her to a drunk driver in Seattle. "Is that why you're so determined to save Sophie? To make up for losing Elena?" Catherine considered this. "Partially, but it's more than that. When Elena died, I realized that all my money, all my power couldn't save her. Couldn't prevent one drunk idiot from destroying everything. I felt helpless in a way I'd never experienced." She closed the album carefully. "But with Sophie I can help. I can use my resources to make a difference. It doesn't bring Elena back, but it gives her death meaning. Like she's still here, still making the world better through what I do in her memory." Jack understood that. He'd spent 4 years since Laura's death trying to make her memory mean something by being the best father possible to Sophie. Now Catherine was doing the same with Elena's memory. "She'd be proud of you," Jack said. "Elena, for what you're doing." "I hope so." Catherine stood. "I should change before Sophie gets home. She likes it when we eat dinner together." After she left, Jack sat with the photo album a little longer, thinking about the 2 women they'd both lost and the daughter they were fighting to keep. That evening, the 3 of them ate dinner together at the kitchen table. Sophie told them about school, about Emma saving her a seat, about how the teacher let her leave class early to avoid the hallway crowds. "Everyone was really nice," Sophie said. "Nobody asked about my hat or why I look different." "That's because they love you," Catherine said. And kids are better at accepting things than adults give them credit for. After dinner, Sophie asked if she could watch a movie. Catherine suggested they watch together, all three of them. They ended up in the living room, Sophie curled between Jack and Catherine on the couch, Hemingway Jr. in her lap. Halfway through the movie, Sophie fell asleep. Jack moved to carry her to bed, but Catherine stopped him. "Let her sleep here. She looks peaceful." So they sat in silence, a sleeping child between them, the movie playing to an audience of two. "This is nice," Catherine said quietly. "Domestic. Normal." "Yeah, it is. I haven't felt normal in 3 years, since Elena died. But sitting here with you and Sophie, I almost feel like a regular person again." Jack looked at her. "You are a regular person. You just happen to have a lot of money." "Money doesn't make you normal. It isolates you. People treat you differently. They want things from you, or they resent you. It's rare to meet someone who just sees you as a person." "Is that how I see you?" "I hope so. Because that's how I see you, Jack. Not as a charity case or a convenient solution to my loneliness. As a person, a good father, someone worthy of respect." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. When the movie ended, Jack carried Sophie upstairs. Catherine followed, and they tucked her in together, a routine they'd developed over 3 weeks that felt like a lifetime. In the hallway, Catherine hesitated. "Jack, can I ask you something personal?" "Okay." "Do you regret marrying me?" The question caught him off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because your life was turned upside down. You're living in a stranger's house, dependent on someone else's money, watching your daughter suffer through treatment. Maybe if you'd had more time to think, you would have said no." Jack thought about this carefully. "If I'd had more time to think, Sophie would be dead. So no, I don't regret it. But Catherine, do you regret it? You're stuck with us now. A sick kid and a broke husband. Not exactly what most people dream of." "It's exactly what I dreamed of." Catherine's voice was fierce. "A family. People who need me. A purpose beyond corporate profits. I don't regret a single moment." They stood in the hallway, closer than they'd been since that night she'd cried in his arms. The space between them felt charged, full of possibility. Jack broke the silence. "We should get some sleep. Sophie has treatment tomorrow." "Right. Treatment, of course." They went to their separate rooms, but Jack lay awake for a long time, thinking about Catherine's question and his answer. Thinking about how this arrangement that had started as pure desperation was becoming something more complicated. Something that felt dangerously close to real. The next morning brought another chemotherapy session. Sophie was quiet on the drive to the hospital, clutching Hemingway Jr. and staring out the window. "You okay, kiddo?" Jack asked. "Just tired of needles, tired of being sick, tired of cancer." "I know, but you're almost halfway through the first phase of treatment. Dr. Martinez said after this, we'll see how much the cancer has shrunk." "What if it hasn't shrunk?" Catherine, driving, glanced in the rearview mirror. "Then we adjust the treatment plan. We keep fighting. We don't give up." "But what if the cancer doesn't give up either?" The question hung in the car, impossible to answer with platitudes. "Then we fight harder," Jack said finally. "We fight until there's nothing left to fight with, and then we fight some more." Sophie nodded, seeming to accept this. At the hospital, they went through the familiar routine. Check-in vitals, blood draw, waiting room, treatment room. Dr. Martinez started the IV while Sophie gripped both their hands. "You're getting good at this," he said, barely flinched. "I hate it less now, still hate it just less." "That's progress." 2 hours later, when the chemotherapy finished and Sophie was resting, Dr. Martinez pulled Jack and Catherine aside. "Her blood counts look good. White cells are recovering between treatments, which is what we want to see. I'm cautiously optimistic." Cautiously. Catherine seized on the word. Cancer is unpredictable. But so far, Sophie's responding well. We'll do scans in 2 weeks to confirm, but I think we're on the right track. Jack felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in weeks. Hope. Real hope, not just desperate wishing. Catherine grabbed his hand and squeezed. She's going to make it. Don't jinx it, Jack said, but he squeezed back. They took Sophie home. She slept in the car, exhausted from treatment. Jack carried her inside and settled her in bed with her collection of hats arranged on the nightstand like soldiers standing guard. Downstairs, Margaret had made soup and fresh bread. Jack realized he was starving, hadn't eaten since breakfast. Eat, Catherine commanded. Both of us. We're no good to Sophie if we collapse. They sat at the kitchen table and ate in comfortable silence. This had become their pattern. Treatment days ended with quiet meals, both of them too drained for conversation, too relieved it was over to do anything but exist together. Jack, Catherine said finally, I need to tell you something. His stomach dropped. What? I've been thinking about what happens after. After Sophie's in remission. After the immediate crisis is over. Okay. The prenup says we can divorce amicably whenever we want. That you get a settlement, Sophie keeps her trust fund, everyone moves on. I remember. I don't want that. Catherine set down her spoon. I don't want to divorce you. I want this to be real. This marriage, this family, all of it. Jack's heart hammered. Catherine, I'm not asking you to love me. I know that's not fair. But I'm asking you to consider staying. Not because of money or Sophie or obligation, but because maybe we're building something worth keeping. You want to stay married to me. I want to stay married to you. I want Sophie to have both of us. I want family dinners and movie nights and arguments about whose turn it is to do dishes. I want normal Jack. I want real. Jack stared at her, this woman who'd entered his life 5 weeks ago and changed everything. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything now. Just think about it. Because Jack, somewhere between signing papers and sitting in hospital rooms and tucking Sophie in together, I stopped pretending this was just an arrangement. It became my life. The life I want. She stood and left the kitchen before he could respond. Jack sat alone thinking about her words, about what he wanted, about what Laura would tell him to do. And he realized he already knew the answer. He just wasn't sure he was brave enough to say it yet. Jack didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Catherine's words over and over. She wanted to stay married. Wanted this to be real. Wanted a family. The terrifying part was that he wanted it too. Somewhere between hospital vigils and midnight conversations and watching Catherine braid Sophie's hair before it fell out, Jack had stopped seeing her as the wealthy stranger who'd saved them. She'd become Catherine, the woman who cried over Sophie's fevers, who learned to make pancakes the way Sophie liked them, who sat beside him in the dark and admitted she was scared. But wanting something and deserving it were different things. What did he have to offer Catherine Sterling? A broken body that couldn't do construction work anymore. A traumatized daughter who might not survive. Nothing but need and fear and desperation. His phone buzzed at 2 a.m. A text from Catherine. Can't sleep either. Are you awake? Jack typed back. Yeah, thinking. About what I said. About everything. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. I shouldn't have put that pressure on you. You have enough to worry about. Jack got out of bed and walked down the hall. He knocked softly on Catherine's door. She opened it wearing pajamas, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. Can we talk? He asked. Of course. They went downstairs to the living room. Catherine turned on a single lamp, creating a small island of light in the dark house. I've been thinking about what you said, Jack started. About staying married, making this real. Catherine tensed. And I need to know something first. When you look at me, what do you see? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Do you see someone you chose, or do you see a project, a charity case you're fixing? Catherine sat forward, her blue eyes intense. I see a man who sold his dead wife's wedding ring to buy antibiotics for his daughter, who stood on a bridge at 3 a.m. and chose to live because his child needed him, who sits by Sophie's hospital bed for days without sleeping because he refuses to leave her alone. She paused. I see someone who knows what it means to sacrifice everything for the people you love. Someone who understands that strength sometimes looks like breaking down and asking for help. Jack, I don't see a charity case. I see someone I want in my life permanently. But why? You could have anyone. Someone successful, someone whole, someone who isn't broken. You're not broken. You're surviving. There's a difference. Catherine moved closer. And as for why you specifically, because you're real. You don't want anything from me except help for Sophie. You don't see dollar signs when you look at me. You see a person. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how rare it is. Catherine's voice turned bitter. Do you know how many men approached me after my second husband died? So many sympathy calls that turned into dinner invitations. So much concern that somehow always led to discussions about investments or business opportunities. Everyone wanting something. I want something too. I wanted money for Sophie's treatment. You wanted to save your daughter. That's different from wanting money for yourself. Jack, you've never asked me for anything beyond what Sophie needs. Never hinted for a better car or expensive clothes or any of the things people usually want from wealthy spouses. Jack thought about the check Catherine had written that first night. $5,000 he'd never touched, still sitting in his wallet like a talisman. He'd been living off her money for 5 weeks, her house, her food, her insurance, paying for everything. But he'd never spent that check. Couldn't bring himself to cross that line. I don't want your money, he said quietly. I never did. I just wanted Sophie to live. I know. That's why I trust you. Catherine reached for his hand. Jack, I'm not asking you to be in love with me. I'm asking if you can see yourself building a life with me. A real partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. What if Sophie doesn't make it? The question he'd been terrified to ask. What if we build this life and then lose her anyway? Catherine's grip tightened. Then we grieve together. We support each other through the worst thing imaginable. And maybe having each other makes it survivable when it wouldn't be alone. You really think we could work long-term? I think we're already working. We've been a family for 5 weeks, Jack. We make decisions together. We take care of Sophie together. We worry and hope and cry together. The only thing missing is admitting that what we're doing matters. Jack looked at their joined hands. When had holding Catherine's hand become natural? When had he stopped seeing her as a stranger? I need time, he said finally. Not to decide if I want this, but to figure out if I deserve it. You deserve happiness, Jack. You deserve a partner. You deserve to rebuild your life. Do I? Because sometimes I think this is all temporary. Like I'll wake up and none of it will be real. The house, the treatment, it's all too good to be true. I'm real. This is real. And it's not too good, it's just good enough. Catherine pulled her hand back. But I understand needing time. Take whatever you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Jack stood. Thank you. For not pushing. Thank you for considering staying. That's more than I expected when I proposed to you in a coffee shop. Jack went back to his room, but still couldn't sleep. He lay awake until dawn broke, thinking about Catherine's offer and what it meant, and whether he was brave enough to choose happiness after so much loss. The next morning, Sophie came down to breakfast, moving slowly, still weak from yesterday's chemotherapy. She'd kept down dinner and breakfast, small victories they all celebrated. Can Lily come over this weekend? Sophie asked, pushing oatmeal around her bowl. Catherine glanced at Jack, checking with him first. He nodded. I'll call Rachel today, Catherine said. I'm sure Lily would love to visit. Good. She promised to teach me card games, says they helped pass time during treatment. After Sophie headed back upstairs to rest, Jack found Catherine in her office reviewing contracts. Can I ask you something? He said. always. What do you tell people about us? About how this happened? Catherine set down her pen. I tell them the truth. That we got married quickly because Sophie needed treatment. That it's unconventional, but it works for us. Why? Because I got a call from my sister yesterday. She wants to meet you see Sophie, and I don't know what to tell her about us. Tell her the truth. That we're figuring it out as we go. That we're partners raising Sophie. That we're... Catherine hesitated. That we're becoming friends. Friends. The word felt inadequate for what they were, but Jack didn't have a better one. When does Jenny want to come? Next weekend. Is that okay? Of course, she's family. This is your home too, Jack. You can have visitors whenever you want. Your home too. Catherine said it so easily, like it was obvious, like he belonged here. Thank you. Stop thanking me. We're married. What's mine is yours. But it didn't feel that simple. Everything was Catherine's, the house, the money, the life they were living. Jack had brought nothing but need. That afternoon, while Sophie napped and Catherine worked in her office, Jack found himself in the kitchen with Margaret. Can I help with anything? He asked. I feel useless just sitting around. Margaret studied him. You could chop vegetables for tonight's stew. And Jack? You're not useless. You're healing. There's a difference. I should be working, contributing something. You contribute every day. You take care of Sophie. You support Mrs. Sterling. That's work. It's not the same as earning money. Margaret handed him a cutting board and knife. My late husband thought like you did, believed a man's worth was measured by his paycheck, worked himself to death trying to prove it. Literally. Heart attack at 52 because he wouldn't slow down. She started peeling carrots. I spent 30 years wishing he'd cared less about earning and more about living, about being present for our children instead of constantly working. You know what I'd give to have him back, even if he never earned another dollar. Everything. Everything, Margaret confirmed. Mrs. Sterling doesn't need your money, Jack. She needs your presence, your partnership, your care for Sophie. Those things are worth more than any paycheck. Jack chopped vegetables in silence, thinking about Margaret's words about what it meant to contribute to a family when you had nothing financial to offer. That evening, Lily and Rachel came for dinner. Lily burst through the door with a bag full of card games and immediately dragged Sophie upstairs. She's been talking about Sophie all week, Rachel said, accepting wine from Catherine. Says Sophie's her new project. Sophie needs a friend who understands, Jack said. Someone who's been through it. Lily does understand. Maybe too well. She still has nightmares sometimes about treatment. Wakes up thinking she's back in the hospital. Catherine's expression tightened. She does. Less now than before. But cancer leaves scars even after the body heals. The fear never completely goes away. They ate dinner together, the five of them, around Catherine's kitchen table. Lily entertained them with stories about her soccer team, about starting middle school, about her friends and teachers, and normal 12-year-old concerns. Sophie listened with wide eyes, like Lily was showing her a future that might actually exist. A life after cancer. After dinner, while the girls watched a movie upstairs, Rachel pulled Jack aside. Can I give you some advice? Please. Don't forget to take care of yourself. When Lily was sick, I poured everything into her care, forgot to eat, to sleep, to do anything for myself. I thought that made me a good mother. Didn't it? It made me a martyr. And when Lily went into remission, I fell apart because I didn't know who I was anymore, beyond her caretaker. It took 2 years of therapy to find myself again. Jack saw his future in her warning. How do you take care of yourself when your child is dying? You find small moments, a hot shower, a walk around the block, a conversation with another adult that isn't about cancer. You let people help you instead of carrying everything alone. Catherine helps. She's been amazing. Rachel smiled. She looks at you differently than she used to, at both of you. When Lily was sick, Catherine was all business. Efficient, organized, but distant. Now she's softer, more present. We've been through a lot in 5 weeks. 5 weeks? You've only been married 5 weeks. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. The way you two interact, I assumed years. We're learning fast. Crisis speeds things up. Clearly. Jack, can I ask you something personal? Okay. Do you love her? The question hit him like a physical blow. I don't know. I care about her. I respect her. I'm grateful to her. But love? Love isn't always lightning bolts and passion. Sometimes it's sitting in a hospital room together at 3 a.m. Sometimes it's knowing someone's coffee order without asking. Sometimes it's just showing up day after day and choosing each other. That sounds like what we're doing. That's because it is love. You just haven't named it yet. After Rachel and Lily left, Sophie went straight to bed, exhausted but happy. Jack tucked her in with Hemingway Jr. and all 6 hats arranged on her nightstand. I like having Lily around, Sophie said sleepily. She makes me feel less alone. You're not alone, kiddo. You've got me and Catherine and Margaret and Lily and Emma from school. I know. But Lily understands the cancer part. Nobody else really does. Jack kissed her forehead. I'm glad you have her then. Dad. Do you like Catherine? The question caught him off guard. Of course I like her. I mean really like her, the way you liked Mom. Jack sat on the edge of Sophie's bed. Your mom was my first love. High school sweethearts. We grew up together. Catherine is different. We came together because of hard circumstances. But Sophie, I'm learning to care about her in a way that feels real. Good. Because I think she loves us. The way she looks at you when you're not watching, it's the same way Mom used to look at you. When did you become so observant? Cancer makes you pay attention. You never know how much time you have left. The casual way Sophie discussed her mortality made Jack's chest ache. You're going to have lots of time, sweetheart. You're going to grow up and graduate and have a family of your own someday. Maybe. But if I don't, at least, I got to live here. Got to have Catherine. That's more than a lot of kids get. After Sophie fell asleep, Jack found Catherine in her office still working despite the late hour. You're going to burn out, he said. Says the man who sleeps on a cot in his daughter's room. Fair point. Jack sat in the chair across from her desk. Sophie said something tonight. She said you look at me the way Laura used to. Catherine's hands stilled on her keyboard. Did she now? Is it true? Would it bother you if it were? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Jack leaned forward. Catherine Rachel asked me today if I loved you, and I didn't know how to answer. What did you say? I said I didn't know, but I've been thinking about it all evening. And I realized something. Catherine waited, barely breathing. I don't know if what I feel is love. I don't know if I'm capable of that kind of love anymore after losing Laura. But I know that when you're not here, the house feels empty. I know that I check my phone constantly for texts from you. I know that sitting with you in Sophie's hospital room feels right in a way nothing else has since Laura died. He paused. I know that when you asked me to stay married, my first thought wasn't about money or security or Sophie. It was that I didn't want to lose you. Catherine's eyes glistened. Jack, I'm not saying I'm in love with you. I'm saying I could be. Given time. Given a chance to build this relationship without the crisis driving every decision. I'm saying yes. I want to stay married. I want to try making this real. Catherine stood and walked around her desk. She cupped Jack's face in her hands. Are you sure? Because once we commit to this, I'm all in. I don't do anything halfway. I'm sure. Scared but sure. Then we'll be scared together. She leaned down and kissed him. Not the chaste peck from their wedding, but a real kiss. Tentative at first, then deeper, both of them testing this new territory. When they pulled apart, Catherine rested her forehead against his. I've wanted to do that for 2 weeks. Why didn't you? Because I was terrified you'd pull away, that I'd ruin everything by wanting too much, too soon. I'm not pulling away, but Catherine, we need to take this slow. For Sophie's sake and ours. We need to learn to be a couple, not just co-parents in crisis mode. Agreed. Slow. We can do slow. But she kissed him again, and Jack realized slow was going to be very difficult. They spent the next hour talking. Really talking about what they wanted from this marriage, from each other, from their future. Catherine admitted she'd been terrified Jack would take the settlement and disappear the moment Sophie recovered. Jack admitted he'd been afraid of becoming dependent on Catherine's wealth, of losing himself in the process of being saved. We're both scared, Catherine said finally. But maybe that means we're both invested, both aware this could go wrong. Or it could go right. Or it could go right. The next morning, Jack woke to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the smell of coffee. He went downstairs to find Catherine making breakfast still in her pajamas, hair messy looking nothing like the polished CEO, and everything like a regular person starting her day. "Morning," she said, smiling at him in a way that made his heart skip. "Morning." They were awkward together now, hyper-aware of each other in a way they hadn't been before. The kiss had changed things, made them conscious of possibilities they'd been ignoring. Sophie came down for breakfast and immediately noticed. "Why are you guys being weird?" "We're not being weird," Jack said. "You totally are. You're standing too far apart and not looking at each other." Catherine laughed. "Your daughter is very observant. I told you cancer makes you pay attention." Sophie poured herself juice. "So did something happen? Are you guys fighting?" "We're not fighting," Catherine said. "We're just figuring some things out." "About staying married?" Both adults froze. Sophie rolled her eyes. "I'm 9, not stupid. I heard you two talking last night. These walls aren't that thick." "Sophie," Jack started. "It's okay, Dad. I want you guys to stay married. I like living here. I like having Catherine as my mom." She looked at Catherine shyly. "Is it okay if I call you Mom?" Catherine's face crumpled. She crossed the kitchen and pulled Sophie into a fierce hug. "It's more than okay. It's everything I wanted." Sophie hugged her back. "Good. Because calling you Catherine feels weird now. You're my mom. Not my bio mom, but my now mom. You're now mom." Catherine repeated, tears streaming down her face. "I love that. I love you. I love you too, Mom." Jack watched them hold each other and felt something settle in his chest. This was his family now. Not the family he'd planned with Laura, not the family he'd dreamed of, but a family built from crisis and choice and unexpected love. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. That afternoon, Jack called Jenny and told her everything. About Catherine's proposal, about Sophie's treatment, about the kiss, and the decision to make the marriage real. Jenny was quiet for a long time. "Are you happy, Jack?" The question surprised him. "I don't know. I'm scared and hopeful and confused and grateful. I don't know if that adds up to happy." "It sounds like happy to me. It sounds like living instead of just surviving." "When did you get so wise?" "When my brother stopped answering my calls for 3 weeks because he was too busy falling in love to notice." "I'm not." "You are. You just described someone who makes your house feel empty when she's gone. That's love, Jack. Maybe not the same love you had with Laura, but it's still love." After hanging up, Jack found Catherine in the garden with Sophie. They were planting flowers, both of them covered in dirt, laughing at something. He stood watching them for a moment, these two people who'd become his world in 6 weeks. Catherine looked up and smiled, and Sophie waved him over. "Come help Dad. Mom says we're planting daisies because they're hardy." "Like you," Catherine added, ruffling Sophie's hat. "Like all of us," Sophie corrected. "We're all hardy. We have to be." Jack joined them in the dirt, planting flowers that would bloom long after winter ended, and he let himself believe that maybe they'd all still be here to see it. Maybe this family they were building would survive the cancer, and the fear, and all the uncertainty. Maybe choosing each other would be enough to get them through anything. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Catherine knocked on Jack's bedroom door. "Can I come in?" Of course. She entered hesitantly nervous in a way he'd never seen her. "I was thinking about what we said, about taking things slow. And I don't want to sleep alone anymore. Not sex," she added quickly. "Just sleeping. Being close to someone. I've been alone for 3 years, Jack. I'm tired of it." Jack pulled back his covers in answer. Catherine climbed into bed beside him, and they lay together in the dark, not touching at first, just existing in the same space. Then Catherine reached for his hand. Jack laced his fingers through hers. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving us a chance. Thank you for saving my daughter, for saving me." They fell asleep like that, holding hands, two broken people learning to be whole together. And in the room across the hall, Sophie slept peacefully, surrounded by hats and stuffed animals, and the knowledge that she had two parents who loved her enough to build a life from impossible circumstances. Whatever came next, whether the cancer responded to treatment or not, whether this marriage worked or not, whether any of them survived what was coming, they'd face it together. For now, that was enough. The scan results came back on a Tuesday morning in Sophie's 8th week of treatment. Jack and Catherine sat in Dr. Martinez's office, while Sophie waited in the playroom with a child life specialist building something with Legos and pretending she wasn't scared. Dr. Martinez pulled up images on his computer screen. Jack saw shadows and shapes that meant nothing to him, but Catherine leaned forward, her business training making her comfortable with data, even when it was about life and death. "The tumors have shrunk by 63%. Dr. Martinez said. "That's excellent response to treatment." Jack felt his knees go weak. 63%. "We were hoping for 50% at this stage. Sophie's exceeding expectations." Dr. Martinez smiled. "She's a fighter. So she's going to make it?" Catherine's voice was tight controlled, but her hand found Jack's and gripped hard. "I never make guarantees with cancer, but these results suggest Sophie has an excellent chance of achieving remission. We'll continue the current protocol for another month, then reassess. If the shrinkage continues at this rate, we may be looking at remission by month 4. 4 months, Jack repeated. When they'd started, 4 months had seemed impossible, an eternity of chemotherapy and fear and watching Sophie suffer. Now it felt like hope had a timeline. "Can we tell her?" Catherine asked. "Absolutely, but be honest about what this means. Good news, but not a cure yet. We're winning battles, not the war." They found Sophie in the playroom, her purple hat slightly askew, concentrating on a Lego castle with intense focus. "Hey, kiddo," Jack said, sitting beside her. "Want to hear about your scan?" Sophie's hands stilled. "Is it bad news?" "It's good news," Catherine said, kneeling on her other side. "Really good news. The treatment is working. The cancer is shrinking." Sophie looked between them. "How much?" "A lot. More than the doctors expected." Jack pulled her into his lap. "You're doing amazing, sweetheart. So I'm getting better. You're getting better. You still have more treatment ahead, but you're winning." Sophie started crying, but they were relief tears. Happy tears, tears that had been building for 8 weeks of fear and pain and uncertainty. Catherine and Jack held her between them, all three of them crying together in a hospital playroom, while other parents watched and understood. They took Sophie to celebrate at her favorite restaurant. She managed 3 bites of pizza and half a milkshake before exhaustion hit, but she smiled the whole time. Real smiles, not the brave face she'd been wearing since diagnosis. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Jack found Catherine sitting alone in the garden. She'd changed into jeans and was surrounded by the daisies they'd planted weeks ago, which were already starting to sprout. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm terrified to believe it. Terrified that if I let myself hope something will go wrong." Jack sat beside her on the garden bench. "I know, but Sophie's getting better. We can't be afraid to acknowledge that." When Elena died, I just started believing Lily was really in remission, started relaxing. And then I got the call about the accident. Catherine's voice broke. What if I'm cursed? What if everyone I love dies? Hey, no. Jack pulled her close. You're not cursed. Bad things happened. That's life, not a curse. But what if nothing? Sophie is getting better. We're going to celebrate that. We're going to let ourselves feel hope. He tilted her chin up. And we're going to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Catherine kissed him, desperate and grateful, and Jack kissed her back. Both of them clinging to each other and the good news and the possibility of a future. They'd been sleeping in the same bed for 2 weeks, just holding each other. But that night felt different. Catherine's kisses grew more urgent, her hands pulling him closer, and Jack responded, desire mixing with relief and joy, and the pure human need to celebrate survival. Are you sure? He whispered against her lips. I'm sure. Jack, I need to feel alive. I need to feel something other than fear. They made love slowly, carefully learning each other's bodies and what brought pleasure and comfort. It wasn't the passionate urgency of young love. It was something deeper, two people who'd been through hell together finding solace in physical connection. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Catherine's bed, and Jack realized this was the first time he'd been intimate with anyone since Laura died. 4 years of grief and loneliness ended in the arms of a woman he'd married out of desperation and was learning to love by choice. Are you okay? Catherine asked, tracing patterns on his chest. I think so. Are you better than okay? Jack, I know this is complicated. I know we're building something unconventional. But I need you to know this isn't about filling a void Elena left. This is about you, us, what we're creating together. I believe you. Good. Because I'm falling in love with you, properly in love. Not just grateful or attached or comfortable. In love. Jack's breath caught. Catherine, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. She kissed his shoulder. No pressure, no expectations, just honesty. I care about you. Deeply. More than I thought possible after Laura. I don't know if I'm ready to call it love yet, but I'm getting there. That's enough. More than enough. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 8 weeks, neither of them woke in panic checking on Sophie. They slept through the night, trusting that good news meant they could breathe for a moment. The next morning, Sophie came looking for them and found them still in Catherine's bed. She stood in the doorway, staring. Are you guys? Jack sat up, suddenly aware this was a conversation he should have prepared for. Sophie, It's about time, Sophie interrupted. You've been making googly eyes at each other for weeks. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Catherine laughed, relieved. You're okay with this? Mom, I told you to stay married. This is what married people do, right? Sleep in the same bed. Yes, but we wanted to make sure you were comfortable. I'm comfortable. I'm happy. Can we have waffles for breakfast? And just like that, their family structure shifted again. Jack moved his clothes into Catherine's room that afternoon. Sophie helped, treating it like an adventure rather than a complication. Now you guys can have midnight conversations without sneaking around, she said, hanging up his shirts. We weren't sneaking, Jack protested. Dad, I heard you and Mom talking at like 2 a.m. 3 times last week. These walls are thin. Sophie arranged his shirts by color, something Laura used to do. I'm glad you're happy, both of you. You deserve happy. Jack hugged her, this wise child who'd grown up too fast. So do you, kiddo. I'm getting there. 63% closer. Jenny arrived that weekend with her husband Dave and their 3 kids. Jack watched his sister take in Catherine's house, saw her trying not to gape at the obvious wealth. Jack, Jenny said, hugging him tightly. You look good, better than you have in years. I feel good, scared still but good. And this is the famous Catherine. Jenny turned to where Catherine stood, uncharacteristically nervous. "Jenny, this is my wife, Catherine. Catherine, my sister, Jenny." The women studied each other. Jenny practical and hard-working, wearing Target jeans and carrying a casserole. Catherine elegant even in casual clothes, radiating wealth and power she couldn't hide. "Thank you," Jenny said finally, "for saving my brother and niece, for giving them a chance when they had none." "Thank you for raising a man worth saving," Catherine replied. The ice broke. Jenny laughed, and Catherine relaxed, and Jack realized they were going to be okay. Sophie entertained Jenny's kids, showing them her room and her hats and Hemingway Jr. The younger kids were fascinated by her baldness under the hat, and Sophie let them touch her head, explaining chemotherapy in simple terms. "Does it hurt?" Jenny's 6-year-old asked. "Sometimes, but not as much as dying would." Sophie said it so matter-of-factly that all the adults in the room flinched. Over lunch, Jenny pulled Jack aside. "She's different. Older. Cancer does that." "No, I mean she's more at peace, like she's accepted something the rest of us are still fighting against." Jack watched Sophie laugh at something Catherine said. "I think she has accepted it. The possibility of dying. And that acceptance freed her to actually live." That's profound for a 9-year-old. "She's not really 9 anymore. She's been through things that aged her." Jenny squeezed his hand. "But she's getting better. That scan was good news." "Yeah, it was." That night after Jenny's family left, Catherine found Jack in Sophie's room. He was sitting in the chair he'd slept in for weeks watching Sophie sleep. "You okay?" Catherine asked. "Just thinking. About how close we came to losing this. If you hadn't found us, Sophie would be dead in a few months. I'd probably be dead too, one way or another. And instead, we're here. She's getting better. We're building a life. Do you ever wonder why?" Catherine sat on the arm of the chair. "Why I found you when I did. If I'd waited one more week, you might have been evicted. Might have been impossible to track down. I try not to think about the what-ifs. They make me crazy. I think about them constantly. What if Elena hadn't asked me to help you? What if I'd ignored her dying wish? What if I'd found you but you'd said no? But none of that happened. We're here. That's what matters." Catherine leaned her head on his shoulder. "Jenny asked me something while you were outside with the kids. She asked if I loved Sophie or if this was about Elena." "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was both. I love Sophie for who she is, brave and funny and kind despite everything. But I also love her because saving her heals something in me that broke when Elena died. Is that selfish? It's human. We're all selfish in our love. We love people because of what they give us, whether that's joy or purpose or healing. Do you love me because I saved Sophie?" The question hung between them. Jack considered it carefully. "I started caring about you because you saved Sophie, but I'm falling in love with you because of who you are. The woman who cries over bad movies, who can't cook toast without burning it, who falls asleep reading medical journals, who loves my daughter like she's always been yours. I do love her like that. From the moment I saw her in that coffee shop, something clicked, like I'd been waiting for her without knowing it." They sat together in the dark watching Sophie breathe, counting each breath as a victory. The next month brought more treatment, more nausea, more exhaustion, but also hope. Sophie's hair started growing back in tiny blonde fuzz. Her energy improved. She went back to school full-time, still wearing hats, but feeling more like herself. Jack started consulting part-time for a construction safety company, using his experience to help other contractors avoid the accident that had ended his career. Catherine had suggested it, connecting him with contacts in the industry. He'd been reluctant at first, afraid he'd fail, but discovered he was good at it. Better than good. "You're a natural teacher," his new boss said after Jack's first presentation. "Have you considered doing this full-time?" Jack hadn't. He'd been so focused on being Sophie's caretaker that he'd forgotten he was allowed to have ambitions of his own. That night, he discussed it with Catherine. They were in bed, her head on his chest. Both of them relaxed in a way that had become normal. "You should do it," Catherine said. "The full-time position. You're good at this work." "But what about Sophie? What if she needs me?" "Then you'll be there. Jack, you can have a career and be a father. They're not mutually exclusive. I just don't want to miss anything. Don't want to look back and realize I was working instead of being present." "You won't. You're not that kind of father. You're not that kind of person." Catherine kissed his jaw. "Take the job. Let yourself build something again." So he did. Jack accepted the full-time position as a safety consultant, working from home 3 days a week and going into the office 2 days. It felt good to be contributing, to have purpose beyond Sophie's illness. Catherine supported him completely, adjusting her own schedule to be home when he had to travel for work. They'd become a true partnership, juggling careers and parenting and their growing relationship. On month 3 of treatment, Dr. Martinez ran another scan. The tumors had shrunk by 87%. Sophie was approaching remission faster than anyone had predicted. "I want to reduce the chemotherapy frequency," Dr. Martinez said. "Move to once a week instead of twice. Let her body recover a bit while we monitor the remaining cancer cells." "Is that safe?" Jack asked. "It's necessary. Sophie's been incredibly strong, but the cumulative effects of chemotherapy are showing. She needs a break." Once a week felt like a vacation compared to their previous schedule. Sophie had more energy, ate better, and started acting like a regular kid again. She joined the school art club, had playdates with Emma, laughed without that edge of fear underneath. One night Jack found her in the garden with Catherine, both of them planting more flowers. "Mom says we should plant something for every good scan," Sophie explained, "so we can watch them grow and remember." "That's a beautiful idea. I chose tulips this time. They come back every year, like I'm going to." The certainty in her voice made Jack's eyes burn. Sophie believed she'd survive now. Believed she'd see these flowers bloom year after year. That night, Catherine pulled Jack aside. "We should talk about what happens after." "After what?" "After Sophie goes into remission. After life goes back to normal. What does our marriage look like then?" Jack understood the question. Their entire relationship had been built in crisis mode. Who would they be to each other when the emergency ended? "I don't know," he admitted. "But I want to find out. Do you?" "Yes. Jack, these past 3 months they've been the hardest of my life. Watching Sophie suffer, worrying constantly, being terrified every time the phone rings. But they've also been the best. Because I had you. Because we did it together. Because I fell in love with you somewhere between hospital vigils and midnight conversations. I love you too." The words came easily now. "I'm in love with you. Not because you saved us, but because of who you are. How you love Sophie. How you push me to be better. How you make me laugh even on the worst days." Catherine kissed him slow and sweet. "So we stay married. We make this real. We build a life beyond the crisis. We stay married. We build a life. Good. Because I'd like to take you and Sophie somewhere. A vacation. Once she's in remission and strong enough to travel." "Where?" "Paris. I've always wanted to show someone Paris who's never been. Show them the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and the best croissants in the world." Sophie would love that. "I'm counting on it. New memories, happy ones. Something beyond hospitals and fear." They started planning the trip, something to look forward to, a reward for surviving. Month 4 brought the scan they'd been working toward. Jack and Catherine sat in Dr. Martinez's office again, but this time Sophie was with them. She'd insisted on hearing the results directly, said she was tired of being protected. Dr. Martinez pulled up the images and smiled. "Sophie, I'm happy to tell you that we can't detect any cancer cells in your body. You're in remission." Sophie stared at him. "I'm cured." "Remission, not cured. You'll need monitoring for years, regular scans to make sure it doesn't come back. But Sophie, you beat it. You won." Sophie burst into tears. Jack and Catherine pulled her between them, all 3 of them crying and laughing and holding each other. "I did it. Sophie kept saying. "I really did it." "You did it," Catherine confirmed. "You were so brave, sweetheart. So incredibly brave." They celebrated that night with a fancy dinner at home. Margaret made Sophie's favorite foods. Lily and Rachel came over. Jenny video called from Portland. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. During dessert, Sophie stood up and clinked her glass like she'd seen adults do. "I want to say something." Everyone quieted. 4 months ago, I thought I was going to die. I had cancer and no money for treatment, and I was really scared. Sophie's voice was steady. Then Mom found us in that coffee shop and changed everything. She married my dad and paid for treatment and became my mom. And I got better. She looked at Catherine. "Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for loving me even though you didn't have to. Thank you for giving me a family." Catherine was crying too hard to respond. She just pulled Sophie into a fierce hug. "And Dad," Sophie continued, "thank you for being brave enough to say yes, for letting Mom into our lives, for choosing happiness even when you were scared." Jack couldn't speak either. He just nodded. "I know I'm only 9, Sophie said. "But I learned something these past months. Life is short and scary and sometimes really unfair. But it's also beautiful. And the people who love you make all the difference." She raised her glass. "To family, the one you're born with and the one you choose." They all raised their glasses. "To family." That night, after everyone left and Sophie was asleep, Jack and Catherine sat in the garden with the daisies and tulips they'd planted growing around them. "We made it," Catherine said softly. "She made it. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. Jack, I couldn't have done this alone. The money was necessary, but so was your love, your presence, your partnership. I never thought I'd be here. 4 months ago, I was planning to jump off a bridge. Now I'm sitting in a garden with a woman I love celebrating my daughter's remission. It doesn't feel real." "It's real. This is real." Catherine took his hand. "And it's just the beginning. We have Paris to plan. Sophie's 10th birthday in 2 months. A lifetime of normal days ahead of us." Normal sounds amazing. Doesn't it? No more hospitals, no more fear. Just regular family life. Jack pulled her close. "I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you so much, it scares me sometimes." "I love you too. And Jack, I'm not going anywhere. This marriage, this family, it's forever for me. Crisis or not." "Forever sounds good." They sat under the stars, 2 people who'd found each other in desperation and built something beautiful from broken pieces. Sophie was alive. They were in love. They were a family. It wasn't the life Jack had planned. It wasn't the life Catherine had expected. But it was theirs, built from impossible choices and unexpected grace, and the kind of love that grows in darkness and blooms stronger for it. And as they sat together in the garden, they'd planted watching flowers grow that would return year after year. They let themselves believe in forever, in happy endings, in the possibility that sometimes, against all odds, everything works out exactly as it should. Sophie's cancer went into remission. Jack and Catherine fell in love, and a family born from crisis became something that would last far beyond it. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything.